Ethan, we're letting you go. Rebecca Vance, the director of HR, slid a crisp severance agreement across the polished table. She was a woman in her early 30s with immaculate makeup and a tone colder than the black and white print on the page in front of me. My mind went blank. 35 years old. 8 years of my life poured into this company, Lighthouse Dynamics. I'd always been reliable, a workhorse. Maybe not a superstar, but I put in the hours. How could it just end? Like this? Why? My voice came out dry, a stranger's voice. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. Why? Ethan, you have to know. Look at yourself. 35, and still in an entry-level engineering role. How many promotions has the company offered you over the years? You never went for them. The younger guys are here grinding until midnight. And what are you doing? Clocking out 5 on the dot to go home and make dinner. Your colleagues are taking courses on weekends, upskilling, and you're at the park with your wife and kid. She paused, then delivered the killing blow. The company isn't a charity, Ethan, and it's certainly not a place for unambitious deadweight. Your attitude, this contentment with the status quo, it just doesn't align with our trajectory anymore. Deadweight. The words felt like a white-hot poker stabbing me straight through the heart. What could I say? I signed the papers in silence, packed 8 years of my life into a single cardboard box, and walked out of the building I once knew like the back of my hand. Past the sympathetic glances and the barely hidden smirks of my colleagues, I stepped out into a world that suddenly felt alien. I drove home in a daze to our rented 650-square-foot, 2-bedroom apartment in Ballard. My wife Ava and our daughter Lily had lived here with me for nearly a decade. I pushed open the door, expecting the warmth of Ava's smile and the rush of Lily's hug. Instead, I was met with a scene that will be burned into my memory forever. Standing in our small living room were 4 or 5 massive men in black suits and sunglasses. They radiated an intimidating energy that screamed professional security. And in the center of them stood my wife, Ava. She was transformed. Gone was the woman in cotton pajamas and an apron, her hair casually thrown up in a bun. She wore a perfectly tailored black power suit that looked like it cost more than my car. Her long hair was swept back in an elegant chignon, revealing the graceful line of her neck. Her makeup was subtle but sharp, her red lips pressed into a firm line. She possessed an aura of command I had never seen before, the undeniable presence of someone at the top. She was holding a file, speaking to one of the bodyguard types in a tone that allowed for no argument, using jargon I couldn't begin to comprehend. The A-round financing for this acquisition needs to be in the account within 3 days. Tell Wall Street my patience is limited. And for the board meeting tomorrow, have the legal team get the share transfer agreement finalized. I don't want any surprises. Only after she finished did she notice me standing frozen in the doorway. Her sharp gaze landed on me, and for a fleeting second, it softened with a familiar tenderness, but the powerful aura around her didn't diminish in the slightest. Honey, you're home. She walked toward me, the men in suits parting for her like the Red Sea. She reached for the box in my hands, but I flinched away instinctively. Ava, what? What is going on? I stared at her, then at the stone-faced men, my brain feeling like a scrambled mess of static. Ava was silent for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Finally, she sighed, a hint of apology in her eyes. I'm sorry, honey. There are some things I've kept from you for the past 10 years. She looked up, her expression calm, and said, word by word, my name is Ava Sterling. I am the sole heir to Orion Capital Partners. And starting tomorrow, I will be formally taking over as the new CEO of the company we just fully acquired. Lighthouse Dynamics. Lighthouse Dynamics. The company that had just fired me. I don't remember much about how I got through that night. My brain was like a computer that had crashed from a virus, stuck in a loop, endlessly rebooting between 2 thoughts. I was just laid off and my wife is the CEO. At a subtle nod from Ava, the men in black suits vanished as silently as they had appeared, melting away into the hallway. The apartment, now empty except for the 2 of us, felt cavernous. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. She was still my wife, Ava, but she wasn't. The faint scent of an expensive perfume had replaced the familiar smell of cooking oil and garlic. The calm authority in her eyes made me feel a sense of distance I'd never experienced before. So, for 10 years you've been. I started, my voice hoarse. Working from home, she answered, her tone concise, as if delivering a project update. Handling the family's investment portfolio remotely. My father's health has been poor, so I effectively took over Orion Capital 3 years ago. The Lighthouse acquisition was a unanimous board decision. Why? Why didn't you tell me? I looked at her, a storm of emotions churning inside me. Shock, confusion, but mostly the sharp sting of being lied to. I was afraid it would change things, she said, stepping closer. She reached out to cup my face, her palm still warm, but the expensive fabric of her suit felt like a cold barrier between us. I loved our life. It was simple, quiet. I didn't want the family drama and the corporate backstabbing to invade it. I just wanted to be your wife, to be Lily's mom. Her eyes were sincere, but not of dread tightened in my stomach. All this time, I had prided myself on being the head of the household, the man who provided for his family. It was all a joke. My hard-earned monthly salary, the one I thought was keeping us afloat, was probably less than what she'd spend on the suit she was wearing. My version of ambition must have seemed to her like our daughter bringing home a gold star from kindergarten. Cute, worth a pat on the head, but ultimately insignificant. We slept in separate rooms that night, for the first time in our marriage. I lay on the bed we'd shared for a decade, the scent of her shampoo lingering on the pillow, and stared at the ceiling all night. From a spare room, which she was using as a study, I could hear her on a Zoom call, speaking fluent English in a rapid-fire cadence, talking about market caps, leverage, and earn-out agreements, a language from another planet. An invisible wall had risen between us. The next morning, when I woke up, she was already gone. On the kitchen table was an everything bagel and a fresh coffee she'd made, with a sticky note tucked beside it in her familiar, elegant script. "Honey, breakfast is on the counter. I'll try to be home early. Love you." I stared at the note, but instead of warmth, I felt a bitter irony. A woman about to take the helm of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, on her first day as CEO, was still acting like a regular housewife, making breakfast for a newly unemployed husband. The scene was surreal. I flipped on the TV. The business news was broadcasting live. Sources confirm that Orion Capital Partners completed its full acquisition of Lighthouse Dynamics yesterday. At 9 a.m. this morning, the new CEO appointed by Orion will arrive at the Lighthouse campus. The future of the tech giant's thousands of employees now rests in the hands of this mysterious new leader. On the screen, the entrance to the Lighthouse building was swarming with reporters. At 9 o'clock sharp, a black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb. A door opened and a single black stiletto heel emerged. Then my wife, Ava Sterling, stepped out into a sea of flashing cameras. Sunglasses hid her eyes, her expression unreadable. Flanked by security, she strode like a queen into the very building that had kicked me to the curb just a day before. In that moment, I knew with chilling certainty that the small, cozy world we called home was gone forever. I didn't go there. I just sat in our little rented apartment like an outsider, watching my wife's coronation on TV. The founder of Lighthouse Dynamics, a man in his late 50s whom I had once seen as a god, was now standing respectfully beside Ava, looking more like a butler. Ava walked to the podium, took off her sunglasses, and revealed the face I knew so well, now impossibly powerful. She wasted no time. "My name is Ava Sterling," she said, her voice carrying through the microphones, clear and strong, reaching across the convention hall and into my living room. "As of today, I'm the president and CEO of Lighthouse Dynamics. I know many of you are curious, perhaps even fearful. That's fine. You only need to know 3 things. She held up 3 fingers. First, as of today, Lighthouse Dynamics is under the management of Orion Capital. The past is irrelevant. All strategies, personnel, and finances will be reevaluated by me and my team. Second, I'm not here to save anyone. I am here to create value. Any department, project, or individual that fails to create value for this company will be eliminated without hesitation. Third, she paused, her eyes sweeping over the hushed crowd of executives. My office is on the top floor. My door is always open, but I expect the people who walk through it to bring me solutions, not problems. Because people who only bring problems are, in fact, the biggest problem this company has." With that, she gave a slight nod, turned, and walked away, leaving behind a dead silence and hundreds of stunned faces. The broadcast ended, but I could imagine the chaos erupting inside Lighthouse Dynamics. My phone started blowing up with texts from old colleagues. "Holy SHD, Ethan, your wife is a total badass. Dude, you were playing the long game. You were the secret heir all along. Ethan, my man, can you put in a good word at the new boss? I've always wanted to move to marketing." Reading the messages made me sick to my stomach. The secret heir? I was just the dead weight they'd thrown overboard. Then a call came in. It was my former manager, Davis. The same man who had condescended to me yesterday was now practically slobbering through the phone. "Ethan, my boy, what crazy situation." "Huh? Yesterday. That was all an act for Rebecca. I've always said you were the real deal, Ethan. Solid, dependable. Letting you go broke my heart. You got to tell Mrs. Sterling, Ava, that I've always been loyal to the company. Before I could respond, a woman's voice, cold and familiar, cut in on his end of the line. Mr. Davis, is it? It was Ava. She was right there with him. Davis stammered, his voice cracking. And Mrs. Sterling, how did you? I've just reviewed your personnel file and your KPIs for the last 3 years. Ava's voice came through the phone, sharp as steel. As a department head, your team has ranked last in performance for 3 consecutive years. The average tenure of an employee under your management is less than 18 months. And you, personally, spend over 40% of your work hours on office politics and unproductive networking. Davis sounded like he was about to cry. My conclusion, Ava stated, giving him no room for excuses, is that you and the sycophants you've promoted are no longer a fit for this company. You can go to HR and process your termination. Oh, and by the way, the director of HR, Rebecca Vance, was fired half an hour ago. Beep, beep, beep. The line went dead. I held the phone in my hand, my palms slick with cold sweat. My wife, on the day after I was fired, had just avenged me in the most direct and ruthless way possible in front of the entire company. But I felt no satisfaction, not a single shred of victory, just a deep, bone-chilling cold, because I knew she hadn't done it for me. She was just taking out the trash, just like Rebecca had done to me yesterday. The next day, Ava Sterling's name was on everyone's lips at Lighthouse Dynamics. She became known as the Devil Wears Armani, a legend whispered in every cubicle and break room. Some said she was a corporate raider from Wall Street. Others claimed she was the heir to some mysterious dynasty. But no one could connect this decisive, formidable CEO with me. Ethan Cole, the quiet, recently fired nice guy. I, on the other hand, had become the most awkward person in the entire company's orbit. A few well-connected people had pieced together my relationship with Ava, and their attitude toward me shifted overnight. They treated me with a new, cautious reverence, trying to subtly ask about the CEO's preferences, hoping I was their shortcut to the new center of power. But most people saw me as something else entirely, a pathetic kept man who had been cast aside. I heard the whispers behind my back, that I didn't deserve her, that it was only a matter of time before she kicked me to the curb for good. I didn't go back to the office. I felt like a ghost, wandering the streets of Seattle. I had no idea where to go or what to do. For the first time, I realized that without the identity of Lighthouse Dynamics employee, Ethan Cole was a nobody in this sprawling city. That evening, I got a call from my only real friend at the company, Mark Peterson. Ethan, you have to see the company's Slack channels. It's insane. Mark's voice was filled with panic. I opened my phone and logged into the familiar workspace. A pinned post in the hashtag announcements channel was highlighted in red, regarding corporate restructuring and personnel adjustments. The sender, Office of the CEO. I clicked on it. The message was brutally concise. To improve operational efficiency and optimize human capital costs, the company would be conducting structural layoffs. The target reduction rate was 50%. 50%. That meant over half of the company's 1,000-plus employees would be out of a job within the next month. The company's Slack exploded. Is she crazy? Laying off half the staff? Is she trying to bankrupt us? This is bullshit. We've been pulling all-nighters for this project, and now they just cut us loose. Is this new CEO trying to destroy Lighthouse? We need to organize. Call the Department of Labor. We need to fight this. I stared at the furious, desperate messages, a chill creeping up my spine. I could picture it all too clearly. Hundreds of men and women, just like me, losing their foundation overnight. Hundreds of families thrown into crisis. And the person who made this decision was my wife. The woman who used to leave the porch light on for me when I worked late, with a plate of food waiting in the microwave. The woman who would spend weekends with me, teaching our daughter how to draw and fly a kite at Gasworks Park. Suddenly, it felt like I had never really known her at all. Ava came home very late that night. I didn't go to bed. I waited for her on the couch in the living room, in the dark. The only light was the cold moonlight spilling onto the hardwood floor. The sound of a key in the lock, and the door opened. She walked in, without her security detail this time. She looked exhausted. Kicking off her heels by the door, she dropped her expensive Birkin bag on the couch, and then collapsed into the cushions beside it with a heavy sigh. She didn't seem to notice me in the darkness. She just closed her eyes, breathing out slowly. At the office, she was the conquering queen. But here, in this small, worn-out apartment, it was as if she finally took off her armor, becoming just an ordinary, tired woman. "Why did you do it?" I asked. My voice shattered the silence, sounding harsh and alien. She jumped, her eyes flying open. She saw me. You're still awake? I asked you. Why are you laying off half the company? I repeated, my tone laced with an accusation I hadn't intended. She was silent for a moment, visibly shifting from CEO Ava's sterling back into Ethan's wife. It's the most optimal solution, she said, sitting up straight, her professional composure returning. Lighthouse is bloated. Too many redundancies, too much inefficiency. More than half the employees are doing repetitive, low-impact work. Cutting them will be painful in the short term, but it's necessary for the company's long-term health. The most optimal solution? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. What you call human capital costs and redundancies are actual people. They're families. Did you ever stop to think about how they're going to survive after you fire them? I did, she replied, catching me off guard. That's why the severance package I'm offering is 3 months' pay for every year of service, far above the industry standard. It's enough money to tide them over for 6 months while they find another job. So you think money solves everything, is that it? My voice was rising without my permission. She frowned, looking at me. Ethan, this isn't about money. It's about business. Survival of the fittest. It's brutal, but it's fair. Fair. I stood up, looming over her. You want to talk to me about fair? You, who were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, who could decide the fate of hundreds of people with a single word. You're going to talk about fair with people like us, who work ourselves to the bone just to pay the mortgage. It was the first time in our 10 years of marriage I had ever spoken to her with such force. Her expression hardened, the warmth draining from her face. So, in your eyes, everything I have today is just because I was born with a silver spoon. Is that it? She stared at me, a flicker of hurt and disappointment in her eyes. You think the last decade of my life, the sacrifice, the studying, the work, you just see it all as some kind of birthright. That's not what I meant. I stammered, feeling a flash of panic. Then what do you mean? She rose to her feet, her full power returning, the CEO re-emerging in our living room. Are you saying I should sacrifice the company's future and the jobs of the employees who actually work hard, all for the sake of a few mediocre performers who refuse to adapt? Ethan, that isn't kindness. That's foolishness. She was a queen from a high castle who had walked into the small home I'd built with love and warmth, and with her cold, rational logic, she was smashing it all to pieces. The wall between us, in that moment, became terrifyingly real. Our argument ended with a bitter stalemate. For the next few days, Ava and I were locked in a Cold War. She left early and came home late, consumed by her corporate blitzkrieg. I pretended to go out job hunting every day, but I was really just wandering through the city's parks and coffee shops, a ghost with nowhere to go. We lived under the same roof, but we were like two strangers who knew each other too well. Our conversations were limited to a few hollow pleasantries over the dinner table. How were the interviews today? Fine. Busy day at the office. Very. Then a long, heavy silence. Our daughter, Lily, seemed to sense the tension in the house. She grew quiet and cautious, no longer the boisterous child she used to be. One evening, Ava came home with a file and placed it on the table in front of me. What's this? I asked. Lighthouse Dynamics has a new department. Employee engagement and culture, she said calmly. I want you to run it. I stared at her, stunned. What do you mean? The department will be responsible for organizing team-building events, planning company activities, listening to employee concerns. Things you're good at, she explained. There are no performance metrics, it's a low-stress role, and the salary. Let's start at $1 million a year. What do you think? I looked at her, and a complex mix of emotions washed over me. Was this pity? A handout? Or compensation? She fires me from the company, then invites me back in a different capacity, offering me a cushy, high-paying job where I could be kept like a pet, a well-paid dependent, living under her shadow. A surge of humiliation and anger shot through me. Ava, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, could you please stop managing my life like I'm one of your employees? She looked taken aback. I'm not. I just thought this would be a good option for you. A good option? I laughed, a hollow, self-mocking sound. Sure. Great pay, no responsibility, close to home. And I get to see my wife, the all-powerful CEO, every day, right? Ethan, why do you have to see it that way? Her voice was tinged with frustration now. I'm just trying to help. I can't stand seeing you so down. Help me. I stood up, meeting her eyes directly. You really think this is helping me? Do you have any idea what it's like out there? I had an interview today, Ava, at a small startup. The moment the HR manager found out who I was married to, she said to my face, Mr. Cole, why are you even looking for a job? With a wife like yours, you could just stay home and count her money. Do you know how they look at me? Like I'm a joke. I didn't have to finish. She understood. The pity, the contempt, the mockery. I am a man, I said, enunciating each word. I have my dignity. I don't need your charity. I won't take the job. It was the first time I had ever explicitly refused her. A flicker of shock crossed her face, quickly replaced by a cold disappointment. Fine, she said, nodding as she retracted the file. Understand. It seems I overestimated your maturity, Ethan. She turned and walked into the study, closing the door behind her. I was left alone in the empty living room, feeling like all the strength had been drained from my body. I had defended my pathetic shred of dignity. But in doing so, I had just severed the last fragile thread of warmth between us. The layoff storm at Lighthouse Dynamics hit faster and harder than anyone had anticipated. Every day, the company's Slack channels were flooded with anger and despair. People were crying at their desks, cursing the new leadership, and selling their office plans on Facebook Marketplace. The whole place felt like a sinking ship. Then I got the call from Mark. Ethan, let's get a drink. His voice was rough and exhausted. We met at a dive bar downtown. Mark looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. His hair was greasy, his face was covered in stubble, and his eyes were sunken. He was my best friend at the company. We'd started on the same day, pulled the same all-nighters, and taken the same heat from management. The day I was fired, he was the only one who had the guts to walk over, clap me on the shoulder, and say, "Take care of yourself." The second round of layoffs was announced this afternoon, he said, downing half his IPA in one gulp. His eyes were red. My stomach clenched. He gave a grim smile. My name was on the list. I didn't know what to say. Words of comfort felt cheap and useless in the face of such a brutal reality. Honestly, I saw it coming, Mark said, taking another long drink. I'm like you, man. No big ambitions. Just want a stable job to get me to retirement. But in this world, if you're not climbing, you're falling. Guys like us, we were always on borrowed time. He looked at me, his expression complicated. Ethan, I know this isn't on you. Your wife, the CEO, she's running a business. We were in her way, so we had to go. Logically, I get it. But man, in my gut, I just can't get past it. His voice broke. My dad just had heart surgery last month. My son starts middle school next year, and my wife. She's been out of work for years. Our whole family was depending on my paycheck. A 40-year-old man, sitting in a dimly lit bar, started to cry. Watching him, I felt like a knife was twisting in my gut. What could I do? Beg Ava? Ask her to make an exception for Mark for my sake? And then what? There were hundreds of other Marks at the company. Could I ask her to save all of them? In her world, wouldn't that just be more of what she called my foolish kindness? I stayed with Mark and drank with him late into the night. On the way to drop him home, he was a mess, throwing up on the side of the road, mumbling over and over why. What did I do wrong? I got home close to midnight. Ava was still up, sitting on the living room couch with her laptop, as if she'd been waiting for me. She smelled the beer on me and frowned. You've been drinking? I ignored her and walked right up to her. Mark was laid off, I said, cutting straight to the point. She looked up, her expression calm. I know. His name was on the second round list. He's my best friend. I know. His family's in a really tough spot. I know that too. She closed her laptop and looked at me. Ethan, what are you trying to say? I want to ask you, I said, looking at her beautiful, impossibly remote face. And for the first time, I felt a genuine, visceral disgust. When you make these decisions, is your heart made of stone? They aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're living, breathing human beings. They have families, parents, children. You're destroying their lives. My voice trembled with rage. My accusation was a rock thrown into an already turbulent lake, unleashing a tidal wave. The color drained from Ava's face. Her eyes, usually so composed, ignited with a furious fire. I'm destroying their lives? She shot back, her voice rising, sharp with anger. How dare you say that to me? You think I enjoy being the villain? You think I feel good watching my employees walk out of the office in tears? Then why are you still doing it? I roared. Because it's my responsibility, she countered, her presence as formidable as mine. I answer to the board of Orion Capital, to thousands of shareholders. I inherited a sinking ship. If I don't make these cuts, the entire company will go bankrupt from cash flow problems in 3 months. Then it won't be half the employees losing their jobs. It will be everyone. Don't you get that? Get it? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. No, I don't get it. I don't get your ruthless corporate logic of strategic amputation. I don't get your idea of short-term pain for long-term gain. All I know is that my best friend, a guy I worked alongside for 8 years, is out of a job because of you. He has a family to support. He has aging parents. And right now, he feels like his life is over. And she stepped closer, her gaze as cold and sharp as a scalpel. So I should keep a redundant, underperforming employee on the payroll just because he's your friend? and let him drag the entire company down with him? Ethan, can you please grow up? This isn't a game. I'm the one who needs to grow up. Her words push me over the edge. Right? In your world, everything I do is immature. If I'm content with my life, I'm unambitious. If I stand up for a friend, it's misguided sentimentality. In your world is the only thing that qualifies as mature the cold, hard logic of profits and losses. Are things like loyalty and compassion completely worthless? Loyalty? Compassion? She laughed, but it was a tired, sorrowful sound. Ethan, you're so naive. Business is war. You show compassion, and your competitor puts a knife in your back. If I'm not ruthless today, tomorrow, it will be our family on the street, crying for help. Don't you dare talk about our family. I cut her off, the words spilling out of me before I could stop them, words I would instantly regret. From the moment you walked into this house in that power suit, looking like a queen, we stopped being a family. The moment the words left my mouth, the world went silent. She stared at me. The anger in her eyes slowly faded, replaced by shock, then by a deep, profound sadness. It was the look of someone whose heart has been pierced by the person they love most in the world. She didn't say another word. She just gave me one last, long look. Then she turned, picked up her bag from the couch, and walked out the door. The door clicked shut behind her. No argument, no slamming. Just a dead, suffocating silence. I collapsed onto the couch, staring at the closed door, my insides feeling hollowed out. I knew I'd said the wrong thing, and I knew that some things, once broken, can never be put back together. Ava never came back. The next day, she sent an assistant to pack up her clothes and personal belongings. The assistant was a sharp, efficient young woman who looked at me with undisguised contempt, as if I were a fool who had stumbled into a fortune and then stupidly thrown it all away. I said nothing. I just watched in silence as they methodically erased every trace of Ava from our home. Finally, the assistant handed me a debit card and a key. Ms. Sterling asked me to give you this. The card has $10 million on it for your living expenses. The key is to the penthouse at the Apex Towers downtown. She has moved in there. She said, you are welcome to join her anytime. The Apex Towers. I knew the building. It was the most exclusive address in the city, home to tech billionaires and old money. The monthly condo fees alone were more than I used to make in a year. I looked at the card and the key. It was the ultimate insult. She was trying to buy off our 10-year marriage with $10 million. Tried to install me in a gilded cage. The failed husband she kept on a leash. Give it back to her, I told the assistant, my voice flat. And tell her that Ethan Cole isn't pathetic enough to live off his ex-wife's money. I used the words ex-wife. The assistant's expression faltered for a second, but she took back the items and left without another word. From that day on, we were officially separated. She was living in a palace in the clouds, overlooking the entire city. I remained in our small, shabby apartment, a museum of our shared memories. Without her, the place felt vast and empty. I started frantically sending out resumes, desperate for a job. But reality was harsher than I had imagined. 35 years old, no specialized skills, and now saddled with the awkward title of the CEO's ex-husband. No reputable company would touch me. The few small firms that offered me an interview paid a salary that was insultingly low. For the first time, I felt the full weight of the world's indifference, the profound powerlessness of a man in my position. At the same time, rumors about Ava and me started to spread. Some said she'd kicked me to the curb, that I was a trophy husband who had been discarded. Others whispered that I was shamelessly trying to get a piece of her fortune. Some even claimed I had cheated on her, causing the split. The same people who had once tried to curry favor with me now looked at me with pity and scorn. I had become the city's biggest joke. During that time, I was a ghost. I'd pretend to go job hunting during the day, but would end up sitting on a park bench for hours, just staring into space. At night, I'd return to the empty apartment and drink until I couldn't feel anything. I even started to miss the old days. I missed the old me, mediocre, maybe, but stable. I missed the old Ava, a nag sometimes, but always gentle and warm. It looked like I had well and truly screwed everything up. The whispers of being a kept man hurt more than being unemployed. Life became a slow grind of self-doubt and public humiliation. Gold digger, washed-up husband, the guy who got dumped by the billionaire. The label stuck to me like tar. I could feel the stares when I walked down the street. The cashier at the corner store would offer me unsolicited advice. Chin up, Ethan. Every man has his rough patches. The breaking point came when Lily came home from kindergarten in tears. Daddy, the other kids said you don't have a job. They said Mommy takes care of you. In that moment, I felt my heart tear open. I couldn't go on like this. For my own sake, and especially for my daughters. I had to get back on my feet. But how? The path back to a corporate job seemed to be permanently blocked. One night, after drinking myself into a stupor, I stumbled home and stared at my reflection in the dusty living room mirror. I saw a haggard stranger. A wave of grief and rage washed over me. I grabbed an empty whiskey bottle and hurled it at the bookshelf in the corner. A piece I had built myself years ago, now covered in a thick layer of dust. Crash! The bottle shattered a shelf, splitting the wood and exposing the intricate dovetailed joint I had so carefully carved. Staring at that clean, precise connection, a flicker of an idea ignited in my mind. Woodworking. It was a love I'd had since I was a kid. My grandfather was a carpenter, and I grew up with the scent of sawdust in my nostrils. I loved the feeling of transforming a plain block of wood into something beautiful and useful. For years, in the hustle of work and life, I had let that passion gather dust, just like the bookshelf. Maybe I could pick it up again. The thought took root and grew with astonishing speed, wrapping itself around my heart. With woodworking, I didn't have to impress anyone or play any political games. It was just me and a piece of wood, a conversation between my hands and the material. The next day, I took what little savings I had left and rented a derelict old warehouse in the industrial part of Georgetown. I scoured Craigslist and bought a basic set of used tools. I locked myself away in that world of sawdust and wood stain. I decided to start by building a new desk for Lily. I chose a piece of solid white oak. I remembered Ava once saying she loved its warm, clean grain. I planed, cut, sanded, and chiseled. The moment my hands felt the solid, warm texture of the wood again, the moment I breathed in that familiar, comforting scent of sawdust, I felt the broken, lost parts of myself slowly beginning to heal. I stopped thinking about the gossip. I stopped thinking about my dead-end job search. I even stopped thinking about the woman I both loved and hated. My entire universe shrank to me and this piece of oak. A week later, a beautiful little desk was finished. Not a single nail or screw. It was all held together by traditional joinery. I had sanded every edge to a smooth, rounded finish and coated it with a non-toxic wood wax. I brought the desk home. When Lily saw it, her eyes lit up. "Daddy, did you make this? It's so pretty." She threw her arms around my neck and gave me a huge kiss. In that instant, looking at my daughter's smiling face, my hands smelling of wood and wax, I felt it again for the first time in a long time. The simple, solid dignity of a man who can create something with his own two hands. My workshop became my sanctuary and my salvation. I threw myself into the joy of creation. I built a rocking horse for Lily out of walnut. I made a comfortable rocking chair for myself from cherry wood. I even took a scrap of camphor wood and carved a small figurine of Ava. As I carved, my emotions were a tangled mess. Nostalgia, resentment, but mostly a quiet sense of peace, as if I were trying to make peace with the past. On a whim, I took some photos of my work and posted them on Instagram, an account I hadn't touched in years. I created a simple handle at Colebuilt. I wasn't expecting anything to come of it. It was just a way to document my new life. A few days later, my post started getting traction. "Wow, that joinery is incredible. True craftsmanship. Dude, is this a family trade? You don't see this kind of pure handiwork anymore. I'm obsessed with the finish on that wood. What wax do you use? Are your pieces for sale? I'd love to commission a desk." Reading the comments and direct messages, I felt a surge of validation that was completely new to me. It wasn't like getting a bonus or a compliment from a boss. This was different. This was direct recognition of my own skill, my own inherent value. I tentatively accepted my first commission. It was from a young mother in my neighborhood who wanted a desk for her son, just like the one I'd made for Lily. We met at a local coffee shop. She recognized me immediately. "Mr. Cole, you're the one behind at Colebuilt. I've heard about you, but I had no idea you did this." I gave a wry smile. What she'd likely heard were the rumors of the washed-up husband. But for the first time, I didn't feel a shred of shame. I sat up straight and spoke to her with confidence, discussing wood types, dimensions, and joinery techniques. In that moment, I wasn't anyone's husband or ex-husband. I was a craftsman. I was Ethan Cole. It took me a week to build that desk, pouring all my skill and attention into it. When I delivered it, the mother and her son were overjoyed. She paid me $5,000. Holding the cash in my hands, I felt a slight tremor. It was less than I used to make in a month. But the sense of pride and accomplishment it gave me was immeasurable. This was the first money I had earned with my own two hands, on my own terms. My business started to grow, slowly but surely. I did no advertising. It was all word of mouth. More and more people sought me out for custom furniture. An old professor who loved traditional design, a young architect with a minimalist aesthetic, and people who simply crave the warmth that handmade objects bring into a home. My warehouse transformed from a one-man studio into a small workshop. I even hired two young guys who share my passion for woodworking to help me. I spent my days in dusty overalls, surrounded by the scent of wood. It was hard, tiring work, but my soul felt a peace and stability it hadn't known in years. I felt like I had finally found my own path. One night, I was in the workshop late, applying the final coat of wax to a new piece. The warehouse's roll-up door suddenly rattled open with a loud bang. I turned around and saw a person I thought I would never see here. It was Ava. She was still dressed like a CEO, in a trench coat and heels, but her face was stripped of its usual cool authority. In its place was a deep, raw exhaustion. There were dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept properly in days. She just stood there, staring at me, at the chaotic workshop filled with the smell of sweat and sawdust. Her designer heels seemed absurdly out of place on the wood-chip-covered concrete floor. We looked at each other, neither of us speaking. Finally, she broke the silence. "I was just driving by," she said, offering a clumsy excuse. "I saw the lights were on, so I thought I'd stop in." I put down my tools and wiped my greasy, sawdust-covered hands on a rag. "What's up?" My tone was neutral. I realized, with some surprise, that the intense anger and resentment I once felt toward her had faded. All that was left was a strange calmness, like seeing an old friend after a long time. She walked in, her heels making a soft, crunching sound on the wood shavings. She looked around at the half-finished furniture, the tools hanging on the walls, and finally, her gaze fell on my hands. They were rough now, calloused and marked with small nicks and cuts from years of neglect followed by intense labor. Her expression was a mixture of things I couldn't quite decipher. Shock, a pang of sympathy, and something else I couldn't name. She started then trailed off. "This is what you've been doing?" "Yeah." I nodded. "It's been good." "Good?" She seemed to find the word baffling. "You gave up a stable career, a comfortable life, to come to a place like this and spend your days with a bunch of wood. And you think that's good?" "Yes," I said, meeting her eyes, my voice steady and certain. "I'm happy here. Everything I make, people genuinely appreciate. Every dollar I earn honestly. I don't have to answer to anyone or play any stupid games. It's a feeling of being grounded. Ava, you probably would never understand that." My words seemed to prick her. I saw her flinch almost imperceptibly. She looked at me, her lips parting as if to say something, but she held back. Instead, she reached into her Hermes bag and pulled out an embossed envelope. "An invitation. Next week is the Lighthouse Dynamics annual gala," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "I was hoping you would come." I didn't take it. "Why would I go?" I asked, as the CEO's ex-husband. "To watch you receive your standing ovation?" "Ava, I'm done being your backdrop." "No, it's not like that," she said, a sense of urgency in her voice. "Ethan, I want you to be there with me on my most important night. Like it used to be, like it used to be." The words hung in the air between us, and we both fell silent. She was right. In the past, every time I got a small promotion or a bonus, she was the first person I'd tell. She would make a special dinner to celebrate, and at the company party, she would proudly stand by my side as Ethan's wife. Now, our roles were completely reversed. I looked at her, at the raw vulnerability and hope in her eyes, and the wall around my heart softened just a little. I ended up going, not because I was still in love with her, and not for the glamour of it. I went because her last words, "like it used to be," had struck a chord deep inside me. After 10 years of marriage, even if the love was gone, there was still history. There was still something left. The gala was held at the city's most luxurious hotel. The ballroom was breathtaking, filled with a who's who of the Seattle tech scene. I felt like an ugly duckling in a borrowed suit, trying to blend into the flock of swans. Ava was the undeniable star of the evening. She wore a stunning red gown, and she commanded the stage as she delivered a powerful speech. She recounted how, under her leadership, Lighthouse Dynamics had gone from near bankruptcy to record profits, tripling its market value in a single year. The applause was thunderous. The crowd looked at her with a mixture of awe and reverence. She had done it. She had become a true titan of industry. I stood in the back corner, watching her, a strange mix of pride and melancholy churning within me. I was happy for her, but every cheer and clap seemed to widen the chasm between our worlds. Halfway through the evening, the celebration was shattered. A young man rushed the stage, snatched the microphone from Ava's hand, and yelled, his voice cracking with emotion, "It's all a lie. This whole thing is a lie." You see the profits, but you don't see what it cost us in R&D to get here. The room descended into chaos. Security guards swarmed the stage, trying to pull the man away. "Don't touch me," he screamed, fighting them off. "Ms. Sterling, I'm asking you. My team, the Genesis Project team, worked until 3 a.m. every single day for 3 months straight. We didn't get a single day off. Last week, our lead programmer, Ken Wong, a brilliant engineer, collapsed from exhaustion. He had a brain hemorrhage. He's in the ICU right now. Have you even bothered to visit him? The product we built made this company billions. And what do we get for it? A paycheck. That's it. What do you see us as? A bunch of code-writing machines. I'm here to tell everyone the truth tonight," he shouted. This woman, this corporate monster, built her success on the blood, sweat, and health of her employees. His words were a bombshell. Every reporter in the room, smelling blood, swiveled their cameras toward the stage. The color drained from Ava's face. She stood frozen, trapped in a blinding storm of camera flashes, and for the first time, she looked completely lost. Her foolproof, invincible business logic, the philosophy she had defended so fiercely, suddenly seemed fragile and useless in the face of a man's life. Her company, the corporate empire she had built, was now facing a public relations catastrophe. And, at its core, was the very issue we had fought about so bitterly: her lack of humanity. The gala ended in a disastrous, hurried retreat. The next day, the story was on the front page of every news site. Lighthouse Dynamics hustle culture puts engineer in ICU. The company's stock plummeted. In the court of public opinion, Ava Sterling went from a celebrated visionary to a cold-blooded capitalist overnight. For the next few days, she locked herself away in her vast, empty penthouse at the Apex Towers, not even going into the office. I saw photos of her online, looking pale and haunted. After much hesitation, I finally called her. The phone rang for a long time before she picked up. "Hello." Her voice was a hoarse whisper. I saw the news," I said. "Are you okay?" There was a long silence on the other end. And then I heard it, a quiet, suppressed sob. It was the first time in 10 years of marriage I had ever heard her cry. She had always been the strong one, the rational one, the one who could handle anything. But at that moment, she was just a hurt and confused woman who needed comfort. "Ethan," she choked out. Was I really wrong?" My heart ached for her. "You weren't wrong," I said softly. "You just wanted to win so badly that you forgot something. Your employees. They're people, not machines. You can replace a broken machine. But once a person's spirit is broken, you can't fix it." What do I do now?" she asked, her voice lost and helpless like a child's. I thought for a moment. "Do you remember back in the old days when someone at the office had a family emergency or got really sick? What did our department always do?" She paused, then said, "You guys would pass a hat around, collect money. You'd send a few people to visit them. You'd cover their work while they were out." "Exactly," I said. "None of that stuff helps the bottom line. From your perspective, it's probably all meaningless, inefficient activity. But Ava, it's those useless things that give a company a soul. It's what makes employees feel like they're part of a family, not just a cog in a machine. It makes them feel like they're fighting for something with a human heart. A company that's all about KPIs and has no compassion," I said, "is a company that won't last." My philosophy, the one she had dismissed as misguided sentimentality, as useless, now seemed to be her only lifeline. I understand," she said from the other end of the line. Her voice was still rough, but there was a flicker of strength in it again. The next day, the Lighthouse Dynamics website published an open letter personally signed by Ava Sterling. In it, she offered no excuses. She simply and sincerely apologized to Ken Wong and his family. She announced that the company would cover all of his medical and rehabilitation costs indefinitely. She announced the creation of a $100 million Employee Wellness and Assistance Fund to support any employee facing personal hardship. She announced an immediate overhaul of company policy to eliminate unreasonable overtime and promote a healthy work-life balance. Finally, at the end of the letter, she wrote a single sentence: "A great company must not only pursue financial success but also cherish the human spirit. This is a lesson I learned from the most important teacher in my life. Thank you." The letter completely turned the tide of public opinion. People no longer saw a cold, calculating queen, but a real, reflective leader who was willing to admit fault and show she had a heart. The crisis at Lighthouse Dynamics was over, and I knew that the teacher she was talking about was me. A month later, my workshop received a very unusual commission. The order was simple: 1 plain, 2-person workbench. The client was Ava's assistant. I didn't refuse. I spent a full week on it, selecting the finest maple, using the most traditional joinery and crafting it with the utmost care. On the day of delivery, I brought the workbench myself to the top floor of the Lighthouse Dynamics Tower, to the CEO's office, a space I had never entered. The office was immense and stunning, with a floor-to-ceiling glass wall that offered a panoramic view of the entire city. Ava was standing by the window. She was wearing a simple white sweater and jeans, no makeup, her hair falling loosely over her shoulders. She looked thinner, but her eyes held a new kind of peace and clarity I had never seen before. She was no longer the intimidating queen, nor the broken woman. She was just Ava. "You're here," she said, offering a smile that was as warm as the afternoon sun. "What do you want it?" I asked, gesturing to the heavy workbench. "Right here is perfect," she said, pointing to the prime spot in front of the window. I moved the workbench into place. The sunlight bathed the warm wood, making it glow. "Thank you," she said softly, walking over to me. "For what?" "For not congratulating me when I was on top of the world, but for being there to catch me when I hit rock bottom." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "And thank you for showing me that some things are more important than market caps and profit margins." I looked at her and smiled. "Well, in that case, I assume the CEO is ready to settle the final invoice for this workbench." She laughed, a light, girlish sound. "Of course." She opened a drawer and handed me a file. "Here's the final payment." I took it, but when I opened it, I froze. It wasn't a check. It was a share transfer agreement. She was transferring 10% of her personal shares in Orion Capital Partners to me. "I don't need this," I said, pushing it back. "It's not for you," she said, shaking her head, her gaze completely serious. "Think of it as the consulting fee that Orion Capital is paying its new lifetime advisor for corporate culture." This time I didn't refuse, because I knew it wasn't charity. It was a gesture of respect, of two equals finally meeting in the middle. I didn't leave that afternoon. The two of us sat there, side by side at the wooden workbench in her enormous office. Outside the window, the city bustled below. Inside, there was only a quiet, sunlit peace. She turned to me suddenly. "Ethan, when you have some free time, do you think you could teach me how to make a small stool?" I turned and looked at her. She had taken off her shoes and was sitting with her bare feet on the cool floor, her expression a mix of hope and nervousness. She looked like a student waiting for her teacher's approval. I smiled. I walked over to my toolbox, picked up a small block of wood and a carving knife, and handed them to her. "Sure, but just so you know," I added, "my rates are very expensive." The sun was warm that afternoon. The smell of fresh wood was rich and sweet. And I knew, right then, that the story of our home was just beginning again in a completely new way.